Hey guys, tonight we follow your footsteps into the muddy lanes and flickering candlelight of a Tudor village, where your life as a midwife begins. Brace yourself, it's anything but charming. You've just stepped into a time where clean water is a myth, women's medicine is mostly whisper and guesswork, and every birth could be your last, or someone else's. You'll need to brave superstition, disease, and some very questionable hygiene. You'll be accused of miracles when things go right, and witchcraft when they don't. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. Let's see who's joining us across the world tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hunch against the wind, your boots squelching through cold muck as you pass thatched cottages and flickering torchlight. Welcome to Tudor England, around the year 1560. Queen Elizabeth I sits on the throne, but your little village doesn't feel much like a golden age. You, a village midwife, aren't paid in gold either. If you're lucky, you'll get eggs, bread, or a warm scarf knitted by grateful hands. More often, you're left with sore joints and a bowl of ale. The air smells of smoke, dung, and damp wool. Someone's baking flatbread nearby, but the scent is overpowered by the nearby pigsty. It's almost charming, if you ignore the rats and the threat of plague. You're not just anyone. You're the woman everyone whispers about when someone's belly swells or bleeds. You're the one they send for in the dark. You live in a timber-framed cottage with creaking floorboards and a roof that leaks when it rains sideways. On your walls hang herbs in bundles: sage, rosemary, mugwort, all used for helping labouring mothers, or fending off spirits, depending who you ask. No one trained you exactly. You learned by watching your aunt, who learned from a neighbour, who learned from a woman who probably delivered her first baby by accident and just kept going. There are no textbooks, no courses, only experience, muscle memory, and gossip. You've had your hands inside more wombs than you can count. Some births are easy, almost elegant. Others are days-long marathons of screaming and silent prayers. You've seen women die in bed, babies born blue and breathless. And somehow you're still doing it. Still showing up, clutching your worn satchel, and hoping today won't be the day something tears or bursts or gets stuck. You're not married, at least not right now. Your first husband died of fever, and your second left after you bled too much during your last childbearing. You buried 3 of your own children before their second birthdays. You stopped crying after the second. Historians still argue whether midwives were respected or merely tolerated in Tudor society. The truth probably lies in between. One day, you're hailed as a miracle worker. The next, they whisper witch because the baby came out breech and you didn't stop it in time. You know things you're not supposed to. How to massage a belly to reposition a baby. Which herbs bring labour faster. Where to press, when to push, when to stop. You know the look in a mother's eyes just before she starts bleeding too much, and how to stuff linen inside her body to stop it. Yes, it's exactly as horrifying as it sounds. Most of your days are filled with the ordinary. Tending your herb garden, helping a neighbour with a rash, mending linens, boiling water. But when the knock comes, usually at night, always panicked, you drop everything. You grab your cloak, your satchel, and your sense of calm. Tonight you're not on call, or so you thought. But here comes a boy, barefoot and out of breath, shouting that his sister's time has come. She's only 15, married last year to a man twice her age. Of course you go. You light a candle stub and begin layering your clothing. Shift, stays, petticoat, overskirt, cloak. You tie your hair back and grab your satchel. Inside, linen strips, scissors, a bit of honey, a worn wooden spoon for the mother to bite on. You tuck in a St. Margaret pendant, patroness of childbirth. Maybe she's listening. Maybe not. You follow the boy through crooked lanes to a low cottage. Inside, the fire flickers, and the girl is moaning on a straw-stuffed bed. Her mother clutches her hand. Her husband paces. You greet them calmly, but your mind's already calculating. Is she too small? Too scared? Too late to turn the baby? You ask them to boil water. Not because it helps, but because it gives the family something to do. You take the girl's hand. Her pulse is frantic. You soothe her with your voice, soft as the wind outside. You feel for the baby's position. Head down. Good. You coach her breathing, rub her belly with warmed oil. The contractions come harder. She screams. Her mother weeps. You stay calm. Finally the head crowns, slick, red, impossibly small. One more push and the baby slips free. A girl. You cut the cord with your shears and wrap the newborn in linen. She coughs, then cries. You've won for tonight. The mother is exhausted but alive. You deliver the afterbirth, placenta, and check for tearing. She'll heal, you think. You clean her, wash your hands in a bowl of ale, and bless the room with a whispered prayer. Outside, the wind is howling. You walk home slowly, the baby's cry still ringing in your ears. You did it again, and you'll do it again tomorrow. You barely sleep. The straw mattress scratches your skin, and your joints ache from crouching too long beside the birthing bed. But the cock crows early in Tudor England, and no midwife gets a lie in. Your hands still smell faintly of blood and lavender. You scrub them with ashes and cold rainwater from the barrel outside your door. You stretch, pull your shawl tighter, and just as you think you might nap before breakfast, there's another knock. This time it's your neighbour, Agnes, red in the face and puffing like a bellows. It's Joan. Her water's broke. She's screaming already. Please come quick. So you do. Again. The house is farther this time, on the edge of the village, past a crumbling stone wall and a low bridge where ducks pretend they're wild. Inside the one-room cottage, it's chaos. Joan's husband hovers, terrified, while her sister tosses herbs into the fire like she's trying to summon a miracle. You wave them all aside and kneel beside the girl. She's older than the last, maybe 20, but thin, with the wide-eyed look of someone who's heard too many stories. You can tell she's in her first labour, and firsts are never easy. You unpack your satchel like it's an ancient ritual. Out comes the linen, the shears, the oil. You dip cloth into warm ale and wipe Joan's forehead. The contractions are close together, maybe too close. You feel her belly. The baby's turned wrong. Backwards, you mutter, pretending calm. Breech. You've delivered breech babies before, but not without cost. You remember one who came out feet first and broke his neck halfway. The mother never stopped bleeding. You still dream about that one sometimes. This is what being a midwife means, knowing when to smile and when to lie. You encourage Joan to get on hands and knees. There's an old trick. Gravity, you say with a wink. Though you know she doesn't know what gravity is, you push gently, trying to reposition the baby inside her. No one talks about how strange it feels. The slick, living shape of a baby under your fingers, still swimming in its private world. You pray under your breath, not to God exactly, but to the saints, to the herbs, to the mothers who came before you. Historians still argue whether Tudor midwives practiced anything resembling medicine, or just a mash of folklore and ritual. You know the truth is both. You'll take anything that works. There's a loud wail. Joan's not the baby's, and suddenly the feet are out. You brace her thighs, talk fast and steady, and the rest of the tiny body slides free. You hold your breath until the baby gasps, chokes, then shrieks. You wrap it tight. Joan sobs. Her husband weeps openly. You let them hold the child while you turn to the business of cleaning. Blood's already pooling beneath her. You press linen between her legs, hard. No one talks about this part, the quiet panic of stopping a mother from bleeding out while everyone's fussing over. The baby. The bleeding slows. She's lucky. You're lucky. Today isn't the day you lose one. You stay long enough to see her drink warm broth, then slip outside. Midwives in Tudor England don't get rest, or praise, or clean clothes. What you get is a chicken if you're lucky, a heel of bread if you're not. Joan's mother offers a blanket. You nod, grateful. You'll use it tonight. Your other one still smells faintly of afterbirth. On your way home, you pass a boy carrying a bundle of rushes. He nods to you wide-eyed. It's funny how the children in the village watch you like you're some kind of magician. Maybe you are. You coax life from pain and silence. That counts for something. By now your knees hurt and your hands shake, but you've still got chores. Your herbs need checking. You grind some dried yarrow and mugwort into a paste for the next labouring mother. The local baker's wife asked for help with cramps, so you wrap a cloth packet of lavender and thyme. Easy enough. Sometimes your job overlaps with healer, though no one calls you that aloud. That's for the barber-surgeons in the next town, the ones who carry real steel and wear hats with feathers. You've seen their work once. A man came in with an infection, his leg rotting from the calf down, and they hacked it off with a saw, no more ceremony than slicing a log. The man screamed so loud your ears rang for days. You'll stick to childbirth, thank you very much. You take a moment to eat, just a crust and a few slices of salted root, and sit by the fire, boots steaming. You think of the 2 babies you brought into the world today. One head first, one feet first, both breathing. That's more than most can say. Still, there's no guarantee the newborns will survive the week. Tudor infant mortality is a grim business. 1 in 3 babies doesn't make it to their first birthday. You've attended so many tiny funerals they blur together. Tiny coffins, tearful fathers, exhausted mothers. Your own first child died during a harsh winter. Fever, probably. Maybe teething, maybe spirits. Depends who you ask. You remember wrapping him in your best linen, singing him to sleep one last time. No mother should have to bury her baby, but in your line of work most do. You fall asleep in your chair that night, the fire crackling low. Your hands twitch in your sleep, still remembering the weight of that breech baby. By morning the fog clings to the village like a wet blanket, and the fire in your hearth is nothing but sullen embers. You stir it back to life with stiff fingers, already sore from the night before. There's no such thing as a day off. Not for you. Today is a market day, which means bustle, gossip, and most importantly, barter. You pull on your patched shawl, grab your basket, and head down the lane, still bleary-eyed. The sun is weak, like it can't quite be bothered, and the air smells of damp hay and unwashed humanity. The market is a noisy knot of shouting and shuffling. Pigs squeal. Someone's yelling about spoiled turnips. You nod to the baker's wife, who presses a crust of rye into your hands. For your help last week, she murmurs, not meeting your eyes. You're not offended. No one ever wants to admit they needed your kind of help, especially when that help involved grinding tansy and muttering over a pot until the bleeding stopped. Your eyes scan the stalls, not for food, but for supplies. You're on the hunt for your tools of the trade. First, linens. Not the fancy kind, just clean enough, soft enough. You trade a bit of dried feverfew and a tip about curing cradle cap for 3 arms' lengths of cloth. Next, something sharp. Your shears are going dull again. You inspect a blacksmith's table where rusting blades and jagged tongs lie in piles. You choose a small knife, thin-bladed light. You test it on your thumb. Not bleeding, but close. It'll do. You spot a rare treat, dried mandrake root. The seller claims it wards off evil spirits and helps with stubborn births. You know it's mostly nonsense. Still you barter 2 candles and a bundle of dried nettle. Who are you to scoff at a little superstition when half your job depends on it? Historians still argue whether Tudor midwives believed in the power of herbs or just played along with local customs to maintain authority. Truth is, belief and performance are tangled like a poorly spun thread. You know which herbs ease pain and which to avoid before they rot a mother from the inside. But you also know that a whispered prayer to St. Margaret can calm a labouring woman better than any tonic. You pass a group of village boys giggling over something behind the livestock pen. One holds up a wooden figure, crude, female, with exaggerated features. "It's the midwife doll," he snickers, wiggling it as the others laugh. You roll your eyes but can't help smiling. You've become legend, folklore, and schoolyard joke all in one. Back home, you lay your market finds on the table. You sharpen the new blade, fold the linens, and hang your herbs to dry. You check your stores, honey is low, and you're nearly out of clean thread. Another trip soon then. Your satchel is your lifeline. You've repaired it so many times the leather feels more like cloth, soft and pliable. Inside each item has its place. Scissors, cloth, oil, salt, a small crucifix, a chunk of wax for sealing wounds. No antiseptics, no gloves, no forceps. Not in this century. Just hands, prayers, and grit. You tuck the mandrake into your pouch, more for the symbolism than the science. People trust symbols, sometimes more than they trust you. Midwives in your time face a strange mix of admiration and suspicion. You're welcome in every home until something goes wrong. Then you're a scapegoat in skirts. If a baby's born blind, if a mother dies in labour, if twins arrive, too many coincidences and suddenly you're accused of dealing in curses or worse. That's why you work quietly. You never shout. You never boast. You let your hands do the talking and keep your head down when the priest walks by. Today's quiet. No summons, no shrieks in the night. You use the time to tend your neighbour's sore-footed child and visit the old woman down the hill who's been coughing since Lent. She tells you stories, how her grandmother once delivered a baby during a thunderstorm while the roof was blowing off. You laugh and tuck the memory away for later. Maybe you'll match it someday. Later, as the sun dips low, a girl stops by. Barely 13. Big eyes, nervous hands. She's not showing yet, but she will be soon. You sit her down, brew a mild tea with raspberry leaf and nettle, and listen. Her story is the same as so many. An older man, a broken promise, and fear curling in her belly like a fist. You don't scold. That's not your job. Your job is to listen, to offer tea, to hand her a bundle of herbs, and whisper which ones to use only if the bleeding hasn't stopped after a week. She nods. She understands. She leaves quietly. You sit by your fire after she's gone, wondering if you'll hear her scream in a few months, or not at all. The wind picks up outside. You tighten your shawl, stare into the flames, and let your mind drift to all the babies you've caught, all the mothers you've saved, and the ones you couldn't. You think about the tools in your bag, not just the blade and thread, but the unspoken ones. Calm, patience, courage. Your grandmother used to say the best midwives carried no tools, only steady hands and stories. You believe her more every year. The candlelight flickers as you doze, chin tilted toward your chest, when a fist pounds the door again. You don't startle anymore. You just sigh, stand and grab your satchel. It's always the same knock, fast, frantic, terrified. Someone's labouring, someone's in pain, someone needs you. Outside, the wind cuts sharp and cold through your shawl. The stars are smeared across the sky like spilled milk, and your breath curls in little ghosts. You follow the boy, this one barely 10, through muddy lanes and broken fences until you reach a house you've never entered before. It smells of meat, sweat, and fear. Inside, the woman lies flat, panting. Her name is Anne, mid-30s maybe. Already had 2 children. This one, though, is different. The pain came early and strong, and now she's crying out with each contraction. You kneel, already scanning her face, belly, legs. Your fingers prod gently. The baby's not crowning yet. You feel something else. Tension, wrongness, too much blood already. You whisper for cloth. Boil water, you tell someone, anyone. You aren't really using it, but it gives them a role, a thread to cling to. The father paces in the corner, knuckles white. A neighbour hovers, wringing her hands. You feel the baby again, still not in position. It's as if the womb is fighting itself, clenched like a fist. This is where things turn brutal. You press your lips together. You have 2 options, wait and hope, or act and risk. You know midwives in your time face impossible choices. No tools to pull a baby free, no safe way to cut. Just your hands, prayers, and the raw chance the mother's body will do what it must. You decide to act. You whisper to Anne, "I need you to trust me." Her eyes meet yours, sweat beading down her temples. She nods. You slip your oiled hand inside, gentle but firm, trying to coax the baby around. Your fingers strain. You can't see, only feel. It's hot, tight, and slick with blood. The baby's arm is up. You try to push it back, give the head space. Anne groans. Your own breath is shallow. You manage it. Slowly, miraculously, the baby moves. The contractions roll again. You urge her to push. 1, 2, scream, then a rush, and the baby slips out. You hold your breath. It's blue. Still, you slap its back. Once, again. You rub the chest, whisper in its tiny ear. Nothing. The room stills. Then a cough, a sputter, the smallest, most miraculous cry. A flicker of life. You laugh. Anne sobs. The father drops to his knees. You wrap the baby quickly. The cord is twisted. It must have been trapped. You cut it, tie it, hand the child to the mother, who clutches her newborn like she'll never let go. But she's still bleeding. Too much. You press linens into place, mix a poultice of yarrow and wool, soaked in cooled wine. It's not precise, but it helps. You don't leave until the bleeding slows. Your fingers are stained. Your dress is ruined. Every birth is a battlefield, and you're the only medic. You carry no shield, no armour, just your hands and your resolve. Historians still argue whether Tudor midwives were revered or reviled for their role in these life or death moments. Some say they were trusted entirely, the only female authority in a woman's life. Others believe they were tolerated only until something went wrong. In your bones you know both are true. You clean your hands in cold water. The blood doesn't come off easily. Your knuckles are cracked. You're too tired to be proud, too grateful to cry. Anne sleeps now. The baby suckles. You gather your things. Before you go, Anne's husband slips a coin into your hand. Unexpected, heavy, and warm from his palm. He doesn't say thank you, but his eyes do. You nod, tuck the coin into your satchel, and step out into the night. The cold hits harder now, like your body knows you've stopped. You trudge home, each step heavy. Your feet are soaked. You peel off your dress and collapse on your bed without even stoking the fire. But your mind doesn't rest. You remember another birth, 2 winters ago, when the mother pushed for hours and the baby never came. You tried everything, changed her position, used oils and herbs, whispered every prayer you knew, but in the end, the baby was lost. So was the mother. The villagers blamed you, whispered behind your back. Someone left dead mice at your doorstep for a week. No one says your job is fair, only necessary. Today, you won. Tomorrow, who knows? You rise at dawn. You must. There are linens to wash, herbs to grind, stories to tuck away for the next time someone's eyes go wide and they whisper your name, with equal parts fear and hope. You take a moment by your hearth, warming your hands around a cup of watered ale. You look at your tools, your satchel, your hands. You think about how this brutal, aching work is also the only thing that keeps you alive. You didn't choose this life, it chose you. And still, every time the knock comes, you answer. The bells ring out across the village, dull and distant. It's Sunday, the day of rest, for everyone except you. You stretch, bones cracking like old wood, and wrap yourself in your thickest shawl. It's worn so thin, it's practically see-through in parts. You tuck your St. Margaret pendant beneath your shift and head toward the church. You're not especially devout, but you show your face. You have to. In Tudor England, church is more than religion. It's survival. Attendance is law. Absence is suspicion. And suspicion is something you can't afford. Inside the stone chapel, the air smells of damp stone and incense. The priest drones on about sin and salvation. You half listen. What catches your ear is the word punishment. He's on a familiar rant. How pain in childbirth is Eve's legacy, the cost of that first fateful bite. You glance at the other women in the pews. Some nod solemnly, others just stare forward, eyes blank. You wonder how many of them have suffered under that idea, convinced their agony was deserved, that every tear, every torn womb was a divine reminder to stay humble and obedient. You've never fully bought it, not when you've seen babies get tangled in their cords, not when a mother screams through her 3rd day of labour, her body burning with fever. That's not God's will. It's just biology, bad luck, and a terrifying lack of medicine. After the service, the villagers mill around outside. The baker's son chases chickens. Old Thomas glares at a patch of suspicious mushrooms. You nod politely, accept a handful of spring onions from a grateful mother, and start heading home when the priest stops you. "Good wife," he says, low voice and stern brow. "There was a stillbirth last week, Alice's babe." You nod slowly. You'd heard the whispers. They say she laboured in secret, no baptism, no anointing, the child is damned. You hold your tongue. You know Alice. She was desperate, alone, and terrified. She delivered in the barn, wrapped the baby herself, and wept for days after. "I would speak with her," the priest says, "encourage confession." Confession, of course, for a woman who bled alone and buried her baby under moonlight because she was afraid to call for help. This is the part of your work they never talk about, navigating the church, sin and shame as carefully as you do the womb. One wrong word and a grieving mother becomes a cautionary tale. Or worse, a heretic. You murmur that you'll visit her, offer comfort. He nods. You leave with a sour taste in your mouth. Later that day, you do visit Alice. She's pale, hollow-eyed, clutching a blanket like it still holds weight. You bring her nettle tea and gently check her belly. There's swelling, but no sign of infection. Physically, she'll recover. Spiritually, that's another matter. "They say she never breathed," she whispers. You nod, unsure what's true. Babies in your world are fragile, born blue, breathless, still. And unless they take a cry of life, the church says they can't be baptized, which means no salvation, no burial in consecrated ground, no rest. You've wrapped too many of those babies in linen, buried them yourself under apple trees and hedgerows, whispering your own version of prayers. You're no priest, but you can't believe that silence at birth means eternal damnation. Historians still argue whether midwives offered secret baptisms to save souls. Some say yes, that they whispered Latin over still bodies in the moments after birth. Others say no, that fear of heresy was too strong. You've whispered enough prayers into small ears to believe it mattered, even if no one else heard. Alice clutches your hand. "Was it my fault?" she asks. You don't lie, but you don't blame. "Sometimes they just don't stay," you whisper. You leave her with dried lavender and a bit of hope. You do what you can. Back in your cottage, you sit by your fire and try to steady your thoughts. The church doesn't understand your work. Not really. They see sin, punishment, salvation. You see blood, breath, the fragile line between life and not life. You wonder what would happen if they saw you baptizing a stillborn behind closed doors. You wonder what they'd say if they saw the bundle of dried herbs you keep hidden beneath the floorboards. The one meant to stop a hemorrhage, not summon demons, but try explaining that to a bishop. You've learned to walk the line, to nod at sermons, bow at processions, and keep your real work quiet. You carry both science and spirit in equal weight, even if neither side fully claims you. As night falls, the wind picks up again. You wrap your shawl tight, light a bit of mugwort in the hearth, and whisper a blessing, not to a saint, not really, just into the air, for Alice, for the baby, for all the mothers who think they did something wrong. Sometimes you think the hardest part of your work isn't the blood or the screaming. It's carrying the guilt they hand you and quietly setting it down so they don't have to. The rooster hasn't even bothered to crow when you hear it. A different kind of knock. Slower, deliberate, wrapped in authority. You open the door to find two men in wool cloaks, one holding a parchment, the other adjusting the feather in his cap. They're not from the village, that much is clear. "We're seeking midwife records," the taller one announces without greeting. Good wife, well past last season. You're next in line. You blink, still half asleep. Records, you ask. He gives a tight nod. Birthing logs, names, outcomes, any cases referred for surgical intervention. Ah, them. Barber-surgeons. You step aside reluctantly, letting them into your small cottage. They eye your herb bundles and candle stubs, like you've invited them into a den of paganism. You fetch the little book you keep tucked near the chimney, not because they told you to, but because it helps you remember. It's a stitched-together mess of chicken scratch notes, dates, names, whether the mother lived, whether the child breathed. The tall one flips through it, frowning. You mark the mother's bleeding, when it's excessive. Degrees? You raise an eyebrow. Bloody or very bloody? He makes a noise in his throat, somewhere between disbelief and disdain. This is becoming more common. The barber-surgeons, trained men, university men, are muscling in on your trade. They carry tools that shine and books in Latin. They're gaining favour at court. They see birth not as a woman's realm, but a surgical event. Controlled, ordered, male, but they don't see what you do. The sweat, the trembling, the whispered prayers, the way a mother clutches your hand and stares into your eyes when she thinks she's dying. They don't see the parts where you sit by her afterward, spooning broth between her lips, while her newborn roots blindly for milk. You ask, have either of you ever delivered a child? The shorter man mutters, we've observed. Observed. From a gallery, behind a curtain, with powdered wigs and measured notes. You felt childbirth. It's not sterile. It's screaming. It's desperate. It's feral. The tall one clears his throat. We'll be in town through Thursday. If there are cases of difficulty, obstructions, hemorrhaging, call for us. You nod, but you won't. You've seen what happens when they intervene. Too many hands. Too much cutting. You're no fool. Historians still argue whether midwives and barber-surgeons ever truly collaborated in Tudor England. Some claim there was mutual respect. Others say the men came to push you out. Tools over instinct, credentials over experience. Judging by the condescension still lingering in your doorway, you have a guess which side wins out. When they leave, you cleanse the room with rosemary smoke. Not because you believe they brought evil, but because their presence clings. Their way of seeing birth as something to control, rather than accompany, chills you. Later that afternoon, another knock. A familiar face, Martha, round with her fourth child, due any day. Can you check, she asks. The last one came fast, and this one kicks like a horse. You kneel and press your hands to her belly. The baby's high, head still floating. You explain in soft tones, show her how to walk more, sway her hips, drink warm tea. She nods, grateful. You give her a satchel of rose petals, chamomile and comfrey root. She presses a kiss to your hand. This is your place, not behind velvet curtains or in stone-walled hospitals. Here, on the floor, in the straw, beside women who fear and hope in equal measure. You still think about what those men said. Surgical intervention. The very idea makes your stomach turn. You've seen it once. A noblewoman, too posh for midwives, insisted on a surgeon's hand. They cut too early, too deep. The mother died. So did the baby. The man who made the incision walked away praised for trying. If it had been you who lost them both, you'd be swinging from a noose by sundown. Later that evening, you stop by a cottage on the edge of the woods. The girl there, Ellen, delivered her baby 2 days ago, and you want to check on her. She's weak but smiling. The child feeds noisily, tiny hands grasping at her breast. You examine her gently. No infection, no excessive bleeding. You help her clean the linens, change the moss she's using for padding. She blushes, but you wave it off. Modesty has no place in survival. You pass by the village square on your way home, and overhear men talking about the surgeons again. They've got forceps now, one says, like tongs to pull the baby out. You shiver. You've heard of these? 2 metal spoons joined at the handle. You've also heard of skulls crushed by the same device. You mutter to yourself, No one's tonguing a baby on my watch. That night, you sit by the fire and sharpen your shears. Not for cutting flesh, only cord. You don't need metal arms. You have your hands, your voice, your gut. Maybe someday they'll call your kind untrained, unqualified, even dangerous. But tonight, 3 babies sleep soundly in this village because of you. 3 mothers still breathe. That's more than any surgeon with his polished knives can claim. The next morning dawns grey and moody, with clouds sitting low over the fields, like they're sulking. As you sip your morning broth wrapped in your shawl, you hear the clang of the church bell. Not the usual Sunday rhythm. This one's slower, deeper, a death toll. Your heart sinks a little, but you don't flinch. Death is never far in your world. You finish your drink, tie your apron, and step into the cold. At the well, the whispers start. The Queen's lady in waiting, someone mutters. Died giving birth, another adds. Her Grace herself almost died last time. You raise an eyebrow. Even royalty bleeds. That's no surprise. You pause to listen. Word travels slowly, but in Tudor England, nothing moves faster than gossip wrapped in tragedy. This time, the palace sent out a rider. News meant to remind everyone just how dangerous childbirth is, no matter how high your station. You remember when Queen Jane Seymour died, 3 days after birthing Prince Edward. That was years ago, and people still talk about it in hushed tones. She had the best surgeons, priests, silks and prayers money could buy, and none of it saved her. Today's news is another grim reminder. Queens and peasants die the same way, panting, screaming, clutching at life as it seeps between their thighs. Historians sometimes debate whether midwives ever served in noble courts. Most agree they did, but only under supervision. In reality, court births were a parade of status. A dozen watchers, whispered Latin, velvet drapes, all the performance of control with none of the safety. You've always wondered how many royal babies came into the world blue and breathless, while their mothers bled onto gilded sheets. Back in your village, there's no velvet, just straw beds, cracked hands, and the midwife's quiet certainty. You're summoned again, just past midday. It's Magda, 3rd baby. The first came easy, the second did not. You remember the tearing, the fever, the stitched-together prayers. She's scared, and so are you. You arrive to find her in early labour, already sweating. You send her husband to boil water, though again, it's just to get him out of the way. He's a kind man, but jittery. Magda's belly is firm, her eyes darting with every contraction. You check gently. Head down, thank God, but her body isn't ready. The baby's pushing, but her womb's not open enough yet. You mix a tincture, pennyroyal and chamomile, and rub her belly with warmed oil. You whisper into her ear, steady and low, just like your mother once did to you. Breathe. You've done this. You can do this. The hours stretch. She screams, begs, claws at the bed frame. Her mother weeps softly in the corner. Her husband won't come in. You stay by her side, murmuring, wiping sweat, catching blood. You're the only thing between her and the edge. Finally, after what feels like 100 pushes, and every muscle in your arm straining, the baby comes. A boy, loud lungs, strong grip. He screams the moment he's born, and you nearly laugh with relief. But Magda doesn't cry. She barely moves. You kneel beside her, clean her gently. You press down on her belly. Blood spurts. Too much. Too fast. You grab the yarrow bundle soaked in cooled wine and press hard. You tear strips of linen, packing them carefully. You keep pressure while whispering to her, stay with me, just breathe. After long tense minutes, the bleeding slows. She opens her eyes and looks at you. Is he? She whispers. He's perfect, you tell her. Just like you. You don't cry, not here, not yet. Later, as you wash your hands in the trough outside, you watch the sky. A red sun setting beneath clouds that look like bruises. You think about the royal lady, how she died in silk, attended by doctors and priests. and how Magda, bleeding in a straw bed, survived because you were there. No surgeon, no saints, just you, your satchel, and your will. As you walk home, you pass the smith's apprentice who nods. Heard about Magda? You did good. You smile, small but real. That evening, a messenger rides through town. A dusty rider on a foaming horse. He stops at the inn, shouts something through the window, then gallops on. The rumour spreads fast. The Queen's sister is dead. Her babe lives, for now. Another highborn woman lost to childbirth. You sip your ale slowly that night, the fire casting shadows across your walls. You think about all the women who don't make it, all the babies born into silence, and you think about how the nobles still believe they have more control, more say in the matter, just because they were born to gold and velvet. But you know better. In the end, birth doesn't care about titles. Blood flows the same. Pain screams the same. Death knocks just as hard. You stare at your tools, the same tools you've used for years, the same ones you'll use tomorrow. No gold, no doctors, just your hands, just your care. And somehow, in the flicker of that firelight, it feels like the greatest power in the world. It starts with a whisper, barely audible over the morning breeze, hidden under the clatter of hoofbeats and the creak of cartwheels. But you've heard it before, that soft, dangerous murmur. The baby died, and then the even worse one. The midwife touched it too early. You pause, hands deep in a basin of linen and ash soap. Your stomach turns. You know what's coming next. Someone's going to say the W word. You dry your hands slowly, watching the villagers go about their day. No one meets your eye. You feel the shift, like a draft under a door. It's not yet an accusation, not fully, but it's circling, sniffing at the edges of the truth. By midday, it's not just whispers, it's sidelong glances. Doors that used to open when you knocked now creak shut. A boy you once helped after a fever scurries past without a word. You pass the baker's wife, and she pretends not to see you. You knew it would come again. It always does. 3 days ago, you attended a birth at the edge of the woods. A quiet one. No husband, no neighbours, just you and young Catherine, whose belly had ballooned before the banns were read. You helped her through the labour. It was long, painful. The child came too early, too small. It breathed for a minute, 2 maybe, then stopped. You did everything you could, but sometimes they just don't stay. And now, Catherine's father is telling anyone who'll listen that you laid hands on it wrong, that the baby's spirit was spooked, that you carried something unnatural in your touch. You know what this is. Fear, grief, the ancient, desperate need to blame someone when things go wrong. Historians still argue whether accusations of witchcraft against midwives were more superstition or politics. But you don't need a debate. You've lived it. One wrong word, one poorly timed death, and your healing hands are suddenly cursed ones. You keep your head down, you speak gently, but you can feel it, the space growing around you, like people are afraid to get too close. And then it happens. You wake one morning to find a bundle on your doorstep. Dried thistle, 3 dead mice, and a knotted piece of twine. It's a curse, of course not a real one, but a message. Someone wants you afraid. Someone wants you gone. You burn it in your hearth, slowly, carefully. You say nothing to your neighbours. You go about your work. But that afternoon, the bailiff comes knocking. He doesn't accuse you outright. No one ever does, not yet. He says he's just checking in, that there's concern among the folk. He asks about Catherine's baby. You explain. Early labour, faint breathing, no time for baptism. You watched over the mother. You wrapped the child. You buried it with care. He nods, not unkindly. But he doesn't say thank you either. He leaves with the same tight expression he arrived with. You know what could happen next. The church might ask for a hearing. The village may demand. You take an oath, swearing you've never spoken charms. never used herbs not named in scripture, never danced under the moon. You've done all those things. Well, not danced. Your knees are too bad for that. But as for the rest, yes. You've used mugwort and foxglove. You've whispered over wounds. You've drawn symbols in oil on women's bellies when the baby just wouldn't turn. Not because it's witchcraft, because sometimes the gesture calms them. Sometimes it works, and sometimes, truthfully, you don't know why it works. That's the part no one wants to hear. That not everything has an answer. You visit Catherine that evening. She's hollow-eyed but recovering. You bring her fresh broth and a balm for her cracked skin. She cries when she sees you. You hold her hand in silence. She tries to apologise. I didn't say anything, I swear. You know she didn't, but someone else did. And in a village like this, grief is fuel and superstition is spark. As you walk home, you remember stories from your childhood of women burned, drowned, pressed under stones, for healing the wrong person, for saying the wrong word, for being born with a crooked smile and too many freckles. You never thought it would be you. Not really. But now, you're not so sure. You light every candle you own that night. You sprinkle salt at the corners of your door, not because you believe it works, but because others believe you believe, and sometimes that's worse. The next day, an old woman named Hilda knocks at your door. She's hunched, nearly blind, one eye swollen shut. She holds out her hand. The pains come back, she says simply. You stare at her, stunned. You came to me, she shrugs. You're the only one who ever helped. You nod. You bring her in. You crush herbs. You brew tea. You smear balm on her aching joints. She winces but doesn't flinch. You realise something then. That even in the shadow of suspicion, people will still come. Quietly. Secretly. Because when the pain returns, when the bleeding won't stop, when the fever won't break, they'll turn to you. Not the priest. Not the surgeon, you, because you know. Later that evening, a loaf of bread appears on your doorstep. No note, just bread, still warm. A day after that, a basket of apples. The whispers don't stop. Not yet, but they fade. A little, for now. And you? You keep going. You tuck the herbs deeper. You whisper the blessings quieter. You carry the fear like a second satchel. Because until someone tells you to stop, really stop, you will keep answering the knock. Because even in a world that calls you a witch, you are still what they need. You're kneeling by the hearth, grinding fennel seeds with a stone pestle, when there's a soft knock. Not frantic like birth, not heavy like accusation. This one's hesitant, curious. You open the door to find young Edith, barely married, barely a woman, with wide eyes and flushed cheeks. It's soon, she whispers. I feel odd. You usher her in, sit her by the fire, hand her warm ale laced with ginger. She breathes deeply, wringing the hem of her shift. My mother said to keep the window shut, she murmurs, else the spirits slip in. You smile gently. We'll open the windows when the baby's out. For now, let the room breathe. Edith is nervous, as many first-timers are, and she's full of the old tales, the kind passed down in kitchen whispers and over sewing baskets. You recognise them all. Don't braid your hair during labour, or the cord will twist. Tuck a knife under the bed to cut the pain. Leave the fire burning, or the baby will be cold forever. You've followed most of these rituals in your time, not because you believe them all, but because birth is a storm. And in a storm, you don't question the rope you're handed. You just cling. You tell her to rest. You'll come when the time is right. But as you walk her to the door, you glance at the iron horseshoe above your lintel. It's been there for years. You never take it down. Your work is thick with superstition. You know what works, medically speaking, or as close to medicine as Tudor England allows, but you also know that belief is its own kind of healing. And besides, some of the strangest traditions seem to help, not always in body, but in spirit. Historians note that Tudor childbirth was shrouded in folklore, rituals blending pagan echoes with Christian overlays. The line between magic and medicine was blurry at best. Many midwives, like you, kept to both sides. A sprig of rosemary here, a Hail Mary there, just in case. Later that week, you're called to a delivery. A poor family, barely scraping by. The labour is slow but smooth. You hum a song from your girlhood as the mother pushes, her eyes shut, teeth clenched. When the baby comes, healthy, wriggling, loud, the room seems to brighten. Afterward, the grandmother buries the placenta beneath the hearthstone. So the babe never wanders, she mutters. You don't question it. It's their way. And honestly, you like the poetry of it. You remember once helping a woman who gave birth in a thunderstorm. Every lightning strike, she cried out, "Saint Margaret, shield me!" You handed her a small charm carved from bone, something your own mother had given you. She clutched it, as if it held her soul. The baby came during a lull in the storm. The mother swore the saint herself had held her hand. That charm still lives in your satchel. Another time, a mother-to-be refused to give birth indoors, insisting the spirits in her cottage would strangle the baby. You delivered the child under an old oak tree, rain drizzling through the leaves. She named the boy Rowan. He grew up to be strong as an ox, with a laugh like thunder. The villagers say the tree protected him. You don't argue. You've lit candles for stalled labour, tied red thread around a mother's wrist to keep the blood in. You've boiled eggs to test if twins were coming, one hard, one soft. You once had to speak to a stillborn baby's spirit by whispering into the mother's ear for 3 nights. She swore it eased the fever. You have no idea if it did. That's the truth. You don't always know. But you do know the look on a labouring woman's face when you hand her a charm. You see her shoulders drop, her breath ease. The pain doesn't go, but something else does. The terror, the helplessness, and that matters. You're walking through the village one afternoon when you see a group of boys tossing rocks at a raven. One hits its wing. The bird screeches and flies off, lopsided. A bad omen, someone mutters. Means a birth'll go wrong. You don't scold them, but later you leave a bit of bread at the base of the church wall, just in case the spirits are watching. That night, you clean your satchel. You count your linens. You polish your pendant of St. Margaret. You tuck in the charm from your mother, the scrap of wool from the storm birth, and a smooth river stone you once found near a cradle. Your tools are strange, yes. Some would laugh, others might accuse. But these things, these odd, quiet rituals, they work, maybe not by science, but by memory, by comfort, and sometimes by luck. You fall asleep that night to the sound of the wind curling through the chimney, your mind drifting toward firelit rooms and whispered chants. And you know, without a doubt, the next birth will carry its own rituals. New, old, familiar, strange. And you'll be there, steady hands, full satchel, and a whisper on your lips. The summons comes just as the sun is rising, a rap on your door followed by the unmistakable cry of a newborn. You open it to find young Joan, her apron soaked and face flushed. She had it already, she gasps. Came too quick, but something's wrong. You grab your satchel without a word. The air is thick and damp, your boots squelching through dew-sodden grass. The house smells of afterbirth and panic. Inside, the mother, a girl named Beatrice, is half conscious, and beside her lies the baby, wrapped and quiet. You move quickly, ignoring the others. You unwrap the infant, alive, breathing but weak. Thin, too small. Your hand brushes its cheek. It doesn't flinch. You press your lips into a line. Premature. Not rare, but always dangerous. You cradle the baby close to your chest, warming it with your own body heat. Fetch the broth, you whisper, and someone scurries off. But the real danger now, feeding. Breastfeeding is a delicate dance, especially in Tudor England. Most mothers expect it to come naturally. It rarely does. Beatrice is too weak to try. The baby can't latch. You squeeze her breast gently, coaxing the first drops of colostrum, thick and golden, onto a cloth. You dab it on the infant's lips, A tiny suckle, you exhale slowly. The milk, when it comes, will take days to flow freely. That's if Beatrice survives the fever, already creeping in. You step outside, take a breath, and do what needs doing. You find Agnes. She had a baby 3 months ago, still nursing. She owes you. You ask her gently. She hesitates, then nods. Wet nursing. One of the few options you have. She arrives an hour later, holds the baby to her breast. It suckles weakly. You sit beside her, watching closely. You check Beatrice's pulse. Thin, but holding. This is the unseen work. The quiet moments. The frantic improvisation. Breastfeeding, when it works, is a miracle. When it doesn't, it becomes a race against time. You remember a noblewoman you once helped, briefly. Her breasts were bound in silk and linen from the moment of delivery. To preserve her figure, they said. The baby was handed off to a nurse who'd borne a child the year before. Common practice, they claimed. But the noble baby died within weeks, fever and thin limbs. You wondered then if what killed it wasn't lack of milk, but lack of warmth. In your village, warmth is everything. You teach mothers to massage their breasts to soften blocked ducts. You show them how to express with thumb and forefinger. You warn them when the milk goes sour. Yes, it happens, and which herbs to avoid while nursing. Rue, for instance, spoils milk. Few believe you until it happens. Historians note that midwives often served as wet nurses themselves, particularly in small communities where options were limited. You've done it once, years ago, when the mother died and no other women had milk. You fed the baby for 6 weeks. She still calls you auntie, even though she's 12 now and taller than you. But there's shame tied up in it too. Women worry their milk isn't good enough. That needing another's breast is a sign of weakness. And if a baby refuses to feed, whispers begin. Curses, bad luck, changelings. You once saw a woman blamed for her baby's death because she had cold breasts. The baby wouldn't feed and died within days. The priest claimed it was a sign of sin. You argued gently. The mother had been starving. There was no milk, but no one wanted that truth. They wanted a scapegoat. You still visit her grave sometimes. Back in Beatrice's home, the baby sleeps now, belly warm and round. You slip out into the yard, close your eyes and feel the morning sun on your face. Another small victory, but it never stops. That afternoon, you visit another home, Elsbeth's. Her baby is 5 weeks old and screams more than it sleeps. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. You check the baby's gums, red, inflamed. Teething already? You rub a clove bud on the gums and the screaming eases. But Elsbeth is weeping. He hates me, she sobs. He won't nurse. I've failed. You sit beside her. You take her hand. He's just small and loud, you say softly. He doesn't hate you. He's just learning. You stay an hour. You boil linen and steep chamomile. You hold the baby until your arm aches. Finally, the child nurses. Not much, but enough. Elsbeth's tears dry. You return home, exhausted, and tuck a list into your ledger. Beatrice, wet nurse needed for 1 more week. Elsbeth, teething salve. Martha, nursing pain, suggest warm poultice. You stare at the list, each name a life hanging on the edge of a decision, a chance of feeding. There are no bottles, no pumps, no formula, just breasts, mouths, pain, hope, and luck. And sometimes, you. The cottage is quiet tonight, the fire crackling gently as you sit with a lump of beeswax in one hand and your ledger in the other. You're trying to make sense of a note you scribbled last week. Elsbeth fever, tongue white, no sweat. But your mind drifts, as it often does, to the mysteries you can't write down. Because here's the truth no one admits aloud. For all your years catching babies and binding bellies, there is still so much about the female body that even you don't understand. There are days when you wonder why some women swell with child after one night, and others try for years without success. Why one mother bleeds to death after birth, while another survives with nothing more than a torn sheet and your whispered prayers? Why a girl of 15 births twins like a breeze, while a strong wife of 35 can't bring one baby into the world alive? You've learnt much through trial and error, through observation and instinct. But there's no map, no anatomy books allowed for women, certainly not for women like you. You've never seen the inside of a womb, except when it tears, when it falls out, when it rots. There's no scholarly diagram, just blood, pressure, and that distinct, awful silence when something goes wrong. Historians still argue whether Tudor midwives possessed more knowledge than their male counterparts credited them for. Some say midwives preserved ancient understandings passed down through generations, hidden from universities and Latin texts. Others insist you were little more than folk practitioners, lucky guessers with linens and luck. You say, try doing this job for 20 years and see what you don't learn. You know the way the belly swells differently when it's a boy. You know the change in a woman's scent when her milk is about to come in. You know when a baby turns in the night just by listening to the way a mother sighs. These things aren't in books, they're in fingers, in ears, in dreams. You remember once delivering a baby whose cord was wrapped twice around his neck. You could feel it before he crowned, something in the tension of the womb, the flutter of his heartbeat against your fingertips. You didn't tell the mother, you just worked and you saved him. Other times, you failed. There was Mary, whose afterbirth refused to come. You tried everything, massage, pressure, herbs. In the end, it rotted inside her. The fever took her in 3 days. You still wake sometimes to her final breath in your memory. And then there are the oddities, the things no one prepares you for. The woman whose milk came in before she'd delivered. The child born with teeth. The mother who bled from her ears during labour. You remember each one, etched into your bones like notches on a staff. Some of it frightens you, you won't deny it. There are days when you wonder if something's watching through the smoke, if the body hides its secrets for a reason. Tonight a young widow named Marion visits. She's pale and shaking. Her courses stopped 2 moons ago. But I've had no husband, she whispers, cheeks red. And there's no child, I swear, just pain, like something twisting. You lead her to the chair by the fire. You press your hand to her belly. It's soft, swollen, but not like a pregnancy. It's different. You know this shape. You've seen it before. A tumour maybe, an abscess, a womb gone wrong. You can't say for sure. You make her tea with crushed marigold and raspberry leaf. You ease her onto your cot for the night. She sleeps fitfully. You do too. By morning she's bled, heavy, clot-filled. Her pain eases. You breathe easier, but you still don't know what it was. A lost child, a mass, a mercy. You don't tell her. You just wash the linens and hold her hand. Later that week, you gather with other women in the village square. An older midwife from 2 towns over is visiting. Lettuce, they call her. She's nearly blind now, but her voice is sharp as she recounts the old tales. You know, she says, there's a bone inside us, a floating one. It stirs when we're angry. That's why they call it hysteria. You laugh and so do the others. You've never felt such a bone, but you have seen women gripped by madness. After birth, during moon cycles, when their milk curdles, is it a floating bone? Or just the cost of being born with too much feeling? They say the womb wanders if you don't keep it anchored, that it can rise up and strangle the heart. You've never seen this, but you know women who suffer from something no man can name. You tuck these stories away with all the others. Not for mockery, not even for truth, just for safekeeping. You tend the female body like an old, familiar house. You've patched its roof, swept its hearth, mended its cracks, but you've never seen the blueprints. No one's allowed to show you. Still, you go on, because when a woman screams in labour, she doesn't cry for the doctor. She cries for you, because when the bleeding starts and won't stop, when the baby won't turn, when the milk won't come, you're the one they call, because you know, even when you don't. It's late autumn now. The air bites sharp through the thatch, and the wind moans low like an old woman trying to speak. You're sipping broth by candlelight when the knock comes. Not frantic, not fearful, just firm, official. 2 parish officers stand at your threshold, clutching a scroll tied with red twine. You already know what this is. The oath, one says. You nod. You were expecting it. Every few years the town elders require a fresh public swearing. Your loyalty, your conduct, your moral decency, your lack of sorcery. It's all very proper, very serious, and very performative. You pull on your cloak and follow them to the church. Inside, the pews are cold, the candles too few. The vicar stands at the altar, spectacles perched low on his nose. Before him, a scroll with your name already written in ornate, slightly smug ink. You kneel. He clears his throat. Do you, Goodwife Jane? They always use your full name for this, as if it adds gravity. Swear before God and these witnesses that you practice the art of midwifery with honesty, chastity, and godliness, that you use no charms, enchantments, or unholy herbs. You pause just a moment too long. Then evenly, I do. You swear that you do not steal babies away, that you have never taken part in blasphemous rites, that you do not consort with cunning folk or wise women who dwell in shadow. You promise to report any suspicions of witchcraft you encounter, even if they wear a friendly face. You keep your expression still, neutral, forgettable. The church bells chime once as the vicar dips his quill and gestures for you to sign. You take the feathered pen, the parchment trembling slightly beneath your hand. You scrawl your name, and with that, you're official again. For now. Historians still debate how seriously these oaths were enforced. Some claim they were mere formality, a piece of church theatre. Others point to trials where a midwife's failure to swear, or her hesitation, was used as evidence against her. You can tell you're being watched, judged, measured against a set of invisible scales that never quite tip in your favour. As you walk home in the gloom, your thoughts wander to the other oaths you've taken, not in churches, but in kitchens and barns, under bed sheets and by firelight, the whispered promises to mothers. I won't leave. I'll keep your secret. I'll save you if I can. Those are the oaths that matter. Back home, you warm your fingers by the hearth and glance at your satchel. Inside are things you technically shouldn't have. Pennyroyal, wormwood, a bone pendant, a bottle of red tincture, whose ingredients you don't entirely name. All forbidden in the eyes of the church, all essential in the eyes of survival. You remember once tending a girl who miscarried in secret. She was barely 16. You stayed with her all night, stopped the bleeding, burned the cloths, buried the bundle. You didn't. Report it. You never would. That girl went on to marry. She had 4 more children. She smiles at you now in the village square. But if the vicar had known back then, your oath would have meant nothing. You would have been branded, punished, maybe worse. The next day, you're called to help a woman named Dorcas who's had a difficult labour. The baby came, but now she shakes with fever. Her eyes roll back. Her skin is hot as coals. The others have done what they can. Prayers, cool cloths, even bleeding her. A foolish act. Nothing works. You know what this is. Puerperal fever. Childbed fever. The silent killer. You've seen it before. You fetch your herbs, willow bark, elderflower, and a poultice of mouldy bread pressed from a damp cellar wall. They laugh at this trick, but you've seen it pull women back from the edge. You make her drink a tea so bitter it curls the tongue. You rub her feet with crushed mint to draw the heat downward. You strip her linens, scrub her skin, and pray not to saints, but to the work. To your hands, to the rhythm of care. You stay with her for 2 days. On the 3rd morning, she breathes easy. Her fever breaks. Her husband weeps at your feet. Was it witchcraft? Someone whispers. No, you say simply. It was clean water and staying awake. But still, you see the unease behind their eyes. A woman on death's edge, now walking again. Some call it a miracle, others call it unnatural. You pack your things and leave before the questions start. That evening, you pass a child, skipping rope. She sings a rhyme, something old and sharp and familiar. Midwife, midwife, under the moon, catch the baby, bury it soon. Tie a ribbon, whisper low, tell no soul the things you know. You stop. Watch her. She smiles, innocent. She doesn't know the weight of what she sings. You walk on. That night, you light every candle in your cottage. You murmur a blessing. You tuck your satchel beneath the floorboard, just in case, and as the wind howls outside, you remember again. It's not enough to be good at what you do. You must appear harmless, holy, unthreatening. You must swear your oaths with a steady voice. You must heal with one hand and hide with the other. Because even a midwife, especially a midwife, can be feared for knowing too much. The harvest moon hangs swollen in the sky, painting the village in silver as you walk the path to Ruth's cottage. It's not a birth this time, it's something quieter, stranger. You've been summoned to ease a heart, not a womb. Inside, Ruth paces the floor, her brow furrowed so deeply it looks carved. Her daughter Margaret is 20 and stubborn, and not yet married. She's refusing Jonas, Ruth hisses, says she'd rather be alone forever. You sip the offered cider, nodding slowly. You've heard this song before. She's taken to writing, Ruth adds, wrinkling her nose like it's an illness. Poems, of all things. Ah, you think. That explains the panic. You visit Margaret later that week, under the guise of a wellness check. She greets you warily, arms crossed. You speak plainly, like always. You ask about her cycle, her dreams, her intentions, and then, carefully, you ask if she's with child. She snorts. I'd have to kiss someone first. You like her immediately, but her mother's worry won't go away. And so now, you're dragged into the role no one talks about, but every midwife knows, matchmaker. Not officially, of course, but you've nudged more than one hesitant courtship toward the altar. You've whispered warnings into the ears of young wives before the wedding night. You've patched up more than one broken union, quietly, discreetly, with a tea, a story, a well-timed suggestion. Historians rarely discuss the midwife's role in romance and relationships. But you know it well. You're often the only one women can speak to openly. About their bodies, about their fears, about whether or not they even want to marry the man their father picked. You've watched bruises fade on wedding night thighs. You've whispered words of comfort no priest would dare offer. And once, long ago, you helped a woman fake her maidenhood with a sponge soaked in bloodroot. It wasn't right, but it was necessary. One winter, a girl named Tamsin begged you for help. Her betrothed was cruel, boastful, already drunk most days. She asked if there was a way out. You gave her a tincture of valerian and clove, told her to take it the night before the wedding, and feign illness. She did. The wedding was delayed, then postponed, then forgotten. She married a gentle cobbler 2 years later. They still bring you eggs each spring. And sometimes it goes the other way. You once helped 2 young lovers, Hugh and Maria, who'd been meeting in secret for months. Her belly was beginning to show. You intervened before scandal could fester. A few carefully timed whispers to both families, a shared loaf of bread at the market, and a chance encounter at the well. 3 weeks later, they were married. You attended the birth 7 months after that. The village pretended not to count, but matchmaker isn't all love stories and sweetened tea. Sometimes you're the one called when marriages fail, when the bed is cold, when the arguments grow sharp and frequent. Margaret's mother isn't the first to ask for a remedy to make her daughter more agreeable. You always refuse, gently but firmly. There are herbs that change the mind, yes, but you will not brew them for obedience. Still, there are softer ways to help. That night, you give Ruth a small sachet of lavender and rose hips. To ease the home, you say with a smile. You hand Margaret a different one, fennel for strength, and tucked inside, a note written in your own careful hand. You are not broken for wanting more. She hugs you silently when she reads it. You leave the cottage under the same wide moon, your breath fogging in the chill. Another crisis softened. Another mother soothed. Another daughter reminded that her body is hers. Later that week, a widow asks you if she's too old to love again. She's 45. Her teeth are strong. Her eyes sparkle. You say, if your heart still beats, you're young enough. She marries the brewer 2 months later. You dance, just once, at their wedding feast. Your knees protest for days, but the laughter is worth it. One day, you help arrange a marriage. The next, you hand someone a sachet of pennyroyal and say nothing. You walk both sides of the line, joining lives, ending them, healing what you can in between. The work never changes, only the names. Because in this village, you are more than a midwife. You are confidante, counsellor, compass. And sometimes, only sometimes, you are the only one who tells the truth when everyone else is busy pretending. You wake to coughing, your own, dry and shallow. The cold has settled deep in your chest, and the air bites with that early winter sharpness that tells you frost is coming. You sit slowly, stretching each aching joint like it's been locked for 100 years. The fire burned low overnight. You shiver as you add more wood, the heat barely cutting the chill. There's a scratching at your door. You half expect another birth call. Instead, it's Elspeth, breathless, pale and shivering under a thin cloak. The fever's come, she says. At least 3 in the north lane. Maybe more. You freeze. Your spoon clinks in the bowl. Fever. Not a birth. Not a bruised ego or a stubborn womb. Plague. Pox. The kind of thing that spreads like spilled oil and kills faster than any childbirth ever could. You gather your things. You tie a vinegar-soaked rag over your nose as you were taught. Whether it works is anyone's guess. You walk the muddy lane, heart pounding. Outside one house, a bundle of rushes lies crossed on the stoop. An old symbol warding off sickness. You've seen this before. Disease sweeping through homes like wind through a wheat field. Sometimes it starts with a cough. Sometimes a rash. Always ends in mourning. The first house is silent, but for moans. Inside, the father is grey-lipped, the mother too weak to rise. The baby sleeps fitfully, burning hot. You check behind the ears, no swelling. Under the arms, rash. It's the pox, not bubonic, thank the saints. Smallpox. Still cruel, but survivable, sometimes. You brew willow bark tea, sponge their skin with cool water. Mix a mash of elderberry and honey. You sing softly to the child, not a lullaby exactly, but a melody your mother used when death hovered near. You know the drill, separate linens, burn what you must, mark the doorway with chalk so others keep clear. You're not just midwife now, you're a firewall. Historians credit midwives with helping to stem early outbreaks in villages like yours. Others say you were carriers, unclean, untaught, careless. You've heard it all. But when fever comes, no one blames the barber-surgeon. He doesn't make house calls in the frost. You do. The next house is worse. The child's already gone. Still and cold, a waxy sheen on her face. The mother won't stop rocking her. Her lips are chapped from crying. You kneel beside her, gently place a hand on her shoulder. She's gone, you whisper. Let her sleep. No, the woman rasps. Not yet. You don't argue. You just stay. Until her hands unclench. Until her sobs become silence. Then together, you wrap the child in linen. You light a candle. You whisper a blessing. You offer to bury the child near your own lost ones. The mother nods. You carry the bundle in both hands, the cold not bothering you anymore. That night, you return home exhausted, soot-covered and dizzy with the scent of vinegar and grief. You boil your clothes in lye water. You scrub your hands until they sting. You drink broth with garlic and thyme, your own little defence against the invisible. You sit by the fire and think of the time you caught fever yourself. Years ago, you nearly died. You remember the burning skin, the strange dreams, the feeling that your bones had turned to glass. The woman who saved you Marjorie, an old midwife with a crooked back and a temper like thunder, died a week later. You've been repaying that debt ever since. By morning, word spreads, 2 more sick, 1 near the mill, 1 child who played with the others before they fell ill. You spend the day boiling cloth, preparing tinctures, wrapping charms in leather for nervous mothers. Not because the charms cure anything, but because fear is a sickness too, and comfort is part of the cure. A mother comes to you that afternoon, eyes full of guilt. I wanted to send for you sooner, but I was afraid. You nod. Of course she was. You've seen what happens when fear spreads faster than the illness, when shame keeps people silent until it's too late. You remember one winter when 6 children died in the space of a week. No one called you then, not until the 7th had already stopped breathing. We thought it was bad luck, someone said. You carry that silence still. Tonight, as the wind screams against your shutters, you lay out your satchel. You add new things: clove oil, mint salve, a square of cloth for masking. You light rosemary in the hearth, cleansing, protective, ancient. You wrap your pendant of St. Margaret in a scrap of linen and tie it to your wrist. Not because you're scared, because you must endure. Being a midwife means more than delivering babies. It means knowing which rashes mean death and which just mean teething. It means burning linens and holding mothers who haven't stopped shaking for days. It means knocking on doors that others refuse to approach. Plague, pox, pestilence. These things don't wait for an invitation, and neither do you. You wake to silence, not peace, but the silence of a house with no bread, no fire, and no coin left in the box. Outside, the frost has bitten through the last of the garden, curling the cabbage leaves like dying fingers. Your satchel hangs by the door, lighter than it's ever been. You count your coin, 4 halfpennies, enough for maybe a heel of cheese and a stale loaf, if the baker's feeling generous. This is the part of the midwife's life no one likes to remember. Not the blood, not the sorrow, the hunger. Your husband, God rest him, died 3 winters ago. Cough turned to fever, fever to stillness. He was a cooper, decent enough with barrels, even better with music. You miss the sound of him, humming as he worked. You miss not waking up cold. You'd been surviving on his small savings and the kindness of grateful mothers. A roast chicken here, a patched pair of boots there. But kindness has its limits, and midwifery has never been a profession of coin. You head out into the biting air, hoping to find work. Not birth, there are none this week, but anything. Salves to sell, fevers to tend, letters to read for the ones who can't. At the mill, they need nothing. At the market, you trade dried lavender and a bottle of vinegar tonic for 3 onions and a cracked mug. It's something, but it won't fill the stove. By mid-morning, your stomach is growling. You sit near the square, chewing a crust of bread so tough you nearly crack a tooth, and watch children toss stones at a frozen puddle. One girl, bright-eyed, red-cheeked, skips over. You're the midwife, aren't you? You nod. She grins. You helped my mum when I came out sideways. You chuckle. You remember? She shrugs. She says you saved her. I was born blue and wrinkly. You smile, a real one. Most of us are. She presses a small apple into your hand. It's bruised but sweet. You hold it like treasure. Thank you, love. This, you think. This is why you keep going. But the truth remains, you are a widow now, and midwifery, while sacred, does not pay the rent. Not when coin is hoarded and work is uneven. Not when male healers in neighbouring towns charge double for half the skill, and villagers, drawn by silver tools and promises, start turning away from your door. You visit a manor house that week. Lady Olwen is said to be due soon. They've called for a gentleman doctor from the city, but you go anyway. You've helped her before. You helped her mother. Surely that means something. You wait at the gates, feet numb from standing. When the steward finally greets you, it's with a pinched expression. Her ladyship appreciates your concern, he says, but Master Denton will see to the birth. You're dismissed, not unkindly, but absolutely. As you turn to leave, you see Lady Alwyn at the window. She doesn't wave. Historians record that as male surgeons rose in status, many midwives, especially widowed or poor, lost their livelihoods, not from lack of skill, but from lack of power. Men had guilds, patrons, Latin phrases. You have bruised apples and fading thanks. Back in your cottage, the wind leaks through every crack. You hang linens in front of the door, press clay against the windowsill. You heat stones in the fire and tuck them into your blanket before sleep. One night, desperate, you visit the town's herbalist, old Marnie. She gives you a bundle of dried mushrooms, a tiny jar of powdered root. Sell these to the wool merchant's wife, she says. Tell her it eases her dreams. You hesitate. Dream herbs? Marnie grins. Legal if you don't name them. You take them. You hate this part. But survival has rules of its own. The next week you're called to a difficult labour. No payment is offered, but you go. Of course you do. The woman's husband is dead. The cottage crumbling. You bring rags and a bit of old honey. The baby comes fast, almost too fast. A boy. He breathes. The mother bleeds. You stay until both are steady. They offer you a single egg. You take it, and you mean it when you say thank you. You walk home with cold feet and warm hands. You pass a young wife on the road, Isolde, newly married, full of nervous hope. She smiles at you, and you smile back. She doesn't know yet what pain may come. She doesn't know how close death always stands during birth. But she knows you'll be there, and that's something. That night, you light your last candle. You slice your bruised apple. You mix what little you have into a broth that's more memory than meal. You sit in silence, hands curled around the bowl. You think of all the women who didn't survive this season, the ones who laboured too long, the ones with no midwife to call, the ones who bled in the cold and were found days later, baby curled against their breast. You survived, again, but barely. Tomorrow you'll answer another knock. You always do, but tonight, for just this one moment, you let yourself rest. You let the fire warm your tired bones. You whisper your own name into the still air, just to hear it spoken kindly. Because sometimes, in this brutal work, even you need saving. It starts with a rumour, soft and sour, like milk left too long by the hearth. A whisper in the market, a glance too long in the square. Then comes the muttering. She lets them scream too long. She buries the babies herself. My cousin swore she saw her talking to herbs. You've seen this before. It's not about truth. It's about timing. You've delivered too many babies who didn't cry. Helped too many mothers survive when they were supposed to die. That's the price of success. Jealousy. And this time, it isn't the men who come for you. It's another midwife. Marjorie, they call her. A widow, like you. New to the village. She moved in from the next shire after her sister died of fever. She's younger, louder. Her shawl is finer, and she speaks in Latin phrases she barely understands. The townsfolk call her learned. She calls herself God-favoured. She calls you old-fashioned. At first you ignore it. You've weathered worse, but soon she starts arriving at houses where you were expected. I heard you weren't well, she says with a too-sweet smile. I thought I'd help. She wears perfume to deliveries. Perfume. In a birth room full of blood and sweat. And she brags, boasts about the time she helped a noblewoman. Once, 10 years ago. And it was the kitchen maid, not the lady herself, who needed catching. You try to be gracious. There's room enough for two, isn't there? Except there isn't. Not really. Soon she's telling others that you use strange methods, that your teas are too strong, that your saints aren't saints at all. You find one of your charms trampled in the mud outside the chapel. Historians note that rivalries between midwives were not uncommon, especially in areas where survival meant scarcity. In Tudor England, a woman's reputation was her bread. When two healers serve the same flock, eventually someone draws blood. It escalates on a cold Tuesday morning. You arrive at a birth, Mary Thatcher's fourth child. She asked for you. But Marjorie's already there, bustling, loud and directing people like she owns the place. Mary looks from her to you, eyes wide. I didn't know, she stammers. I told Thomas to fetch you. Marjorie grins. And yet here I am. You step back. You should walk away. But the labour has started and Mary is scared. You kneel beside her, ignoring Marjorie's glare. Let's do this together, you say. It's a lie, you're not doing this together. But you won't leave Mary in the middle of a birth. The delivery is long and hard. The baby is large, too large. You suggest changing positions, get her on her knees, loosen the hips. Marjorie scoffs. She should stay still and pray. You clench your jaw. In the end, you catch the child. You unwrap the cord from the neck. You rub his back until he cries, loud, beautiful. Marjorie cuts the cord with a flourish and announces, "A fine boy." No. Mention of your hands, your whisper, your steadiness. You leave before the thank yous, heart burning. That night, someone throws a clump of dirt at your door. Just dirt, but wrapped in linen. A message. You boil your herbs more quietly now. You wear your oldest cloak. You smile less. You stay on the edges of gatherings. And then, as all storms do, it breaks. Marjorie is called to a breech birth. She insists she can handle it. But she's never seen one. She panics. She pulls too early. The baby dies. The mother nearly does too. You're summoned at the last moment. You work fast, clean, calm. You save the woman. You wrap the baby. You say nothing. But others do. The murmurs shift. Not toward you, but toward her. She doesn't know what she's doing. She cared more for the glory than the mother. She never prayed, not once. You see her the next week at the well, shoulders hunched. She doesn't meet your eye. You don't gloat. You know what it's like to fall. That afternoon, Mary Thatcher sends you a loaf of bread and a jar of honey. For being the one I truly trusted, the note says. Still, you don't feel triumphant, because you know next month, next year, it could happen again. Another midwife, another rivalry, another whisper. This work doesn't leave space for pride. It leaves only space for doing the work again, and again, and again. You sit by your fire that night and write a new page in your ledger. Not just names and births, but the lessons, the bruises, the near misses, the rivalries, the mercy. And in the margin, you write, "We serve, even when unseen." The summons comes wrapped in wool and wax, an official seal, burgundy red, pressed with the crest of a swan. You frown, turning it over. You don't get letters. And when you do, they're never from there. You crack the wax and read the neat script. The Lady of Eldon Court is expecting. You're requested, not invited, not offered, requested to attend. You fold the note carefully, press your palms to your eyes and sigh. Noble births are another world. You're not fond of silk sheets and servants who glare at your boots, but coin is coin, and you're behind on firewood. You wash your cloak, comb your hair, scrub your hands raw, and early the next morning you walk the long path toward the manor house on the hill. Eldon Court looms like a sleeping giant, all stone walls and shuttered windows. Inside, the floors creak despite their polish. A maid leads you past a parlour the size of your entire cottage. The air smells like rosemary and candle wax, but no one greets you. You're shown to the birthing chamber. The lady lies pale beneath a canopy of lace. She looks like she's barely eaten in days, and her wrists are thinner than your smallest string of dried mint. Two maids hover in silence. A physician sits near the fire, flipping through a book with more gold leaf than wisdom. He doesn't look up. You set your satchel down and introduce yourself. No one replies. South. This kind of birth, then. You work quietly. You take the lady's hand. Her lips are dry, her eyes tired. She whispers, "Thank you for coming." That's all. You examine her. She's not far along, but something's not right. Her belly is too firm, the baby too still. You ask how long since she last felt movement. She hesitates. 3 days, maybe 4. You nod, press gently. The child shifts, but not naturally. You don't say what you fear. A cord wrapped, a failing womb, maybe worse. You make tea, just chamomile and mint, nothing risky. You give her a few sips, you warm her hands, you speak to her belly in a soft, humming voice. You know it's not the words, but the rhythm that sometimes stirs a baby into answering. Eventually, a faint kick. Just one. You glance at the doctor. He hasn't noticed. Of course not. The labour begins 2 nights later, and it is long, painful. The lady screams into silk pillows while her maids hold her ankles like it's theatre. The doctor panics by the hour, muttering about leeches and scalpels. You ignore him. You coax the baby gently, talking between each wave of agony. You push against her back to ease the pain. You guide her through the fear. The baby arrives just before dawn. A girl, quiet, small but breathing. The room is still, and then slowly, Lady Eldon begins to sob. Not from pain, from relief. You clean the baby, wrap her in fine linen, and pass her to her mother. You press fresh cloths to the bleeding. You watch, you wait, you know. The doctor offers to stitch her. She declines. She turns to you instead. You work gently, and her eyes do not leave yours. By morning, you're dismissed, paid in coin, more than you've seen in months. The steward doesn't thank you, but the lady squeezes your hand. Just once, you leave with a heavy pouch and heavier shoulders. You're not home long before another knock. The thatcher's wife is in labour. Her home is crooked, smoky, filled with squawking hens and screaming children. You deliver the baby in a corner beside a dying fire, on rags that smell of cabbage and clay. This baby cries loudly. There's no coin, only a bowl of broth and a worn pair of mittens, but you accept both gladly. This is your life. Nobles and serfs, swans and hens, velvet and straw. Historians often paint midwives as tied to the lower classes, but you know better. You've touched hands that wore rings and those that were raw with soil, and in labour, all hands shake the same. You shift constantly, soft for the rich, firm for the poor. You bow to lords, but you tell them no when the birth turns bad. You kneel for the labouring maid, just as you did for the countess. The babies don't know the difference. Later that week, a merchant's wife calls for you. She's terrified of pain, so you mix her a drink of poppy and wine, just enough to soften her thoughts. She names the baby Godfrey. She gives you a spool of red thread and a kiss on the cheek. You leave smiling. That night, you sit by the fire and count your earnings. Some coin, 3 onions, a new needle, a bit of honey, a lace handkerchief you'll never use, and a baby's slipper carved from bone. Not a fortune, but a life. You hold the slipper in your hand, staring into the fire, and think, today I was welcomed into a manor and a mud hut. I heard a baby cry in silk and another on rags. Both will grow, or not. You can't say which life will be longer, but you know which one will love the world more. And tomorrow when the knock comes again, you'll go. The days are growing shorter now. The light fades before supper, and the mornings arrive draped in mist that clings to the thatch like sorrow. You sit on your stool, bent over a bundle of dried sheep gut, threading it with careful fingers. Across from you, a girl of 17 wrings her hands in her lap, eyes flicking between the fire and the floor. You said you'd help, she whispers. You nod. I will. She's newly married, barely a month. Her husband is kind but clumsy, and the blood on the sheets on their wedding night didn't stop after the first. It's been 3 weeks of pain, tears, and a growing distance between them. So tonight, you're not the midwife, not quite. Tonight, you are Tudor England's closest thing to a sex educator. You hand her the small bundle, the cleaned and oiled sheep intestine, folded neatly. He can use this, you say gently. It will help with the soreness. It may not feel like much, but it keeps the seed from taking root too quickly. She nods, cheeks red. In your day, these are the conversations no one else dares to have. The priest thunders from the pulpit about obedience and submission. The men joke in the alehouse about what breaking in a wife means. But when the blood keeps coming, or the child never quickens, it is you, the women seek out in the dark. You've lost count of the whispered questions. Why does it hurt? Why doesn't it start? Why won't it stop? Why can't I carry? You explain what you can, in words they understand. That the body must want what it receives. That dryness causes pain. That grief can tie the womb in knots. That too many births too close together can ruin a woman's lining before she's 25. Historians often skip this part of the midwife's role, the careful, taboo, absolutely essential education in all things hidden between a woman's legs. You've taught more wives how to prepare their own body than any physician ever will. And more than once you've had to teach the husbands too, like Walter, poor blundering Walter. You remember when his wife, Ellen, came to you with bruises on her inner thighs and eyes that didn't meet yours. You invited Walter to your cottage under the pretense of needing help lifting firewood. Once he was seated, you poured him a cup of hot cider and gave him a lesson he would never forget. You drew a circle in ash on the table. You explained that there is more than one way to love a woman, that if she is hurting, it means he is failing, not the other way around. To his credit, he listened. They have 3 children now, all loud, all healthy. Tonight, after the girl leaves, you turn to a different task, a tincture of wild carrot seed, crushed and steeped. You'll give it to Isolde, the weaver's daughter, who came to you with eyes full of terror. It was only once, she'd whispered, and I don't want to marry him. You understand. You always do. You give her the tincture. You don't ask questions. You've seen the other side of that coin too many times. Girls with bellies they can't name, forced into unions that turn violent. Children born of shame, of silence. Sometimes mercy comes in the form of bitter tea. You've also kept secrets, carefully, quietly. There are men in this village who believe their wives barren. You know otherwise. You brewed that infertility, just a drop at a time, mixed into broth or bread. Because no more pregnancies meant no more beatings. Some would call it sin, others would call it power. You call it protection. You've learned how to speak about these things in metaphors, in riddles. The door must open before the guest may enter. A dry field yields no grain. It keeps the lessons alive while keeping you safe from accusation. But sometimes the young ones push harder. What happens if you don't want any children? They ask. You sigh. That's the question no one dares voice. You don't have an answer, not one the world will accept. But in your heart you think, then don't. You've made salves to cool desire. You've taught breathing tricks to delay the flow of seed. You've sewn amulets, instructed women on when not to lie with their husbands, coached them in excuses that are part theatre, part truth. And sometimes, yes, you've helped end what has already begun. Only when asked, only when desperate. There's a line you walk, every day, between care and crime, between life and law. You never speak of it aloud. That night, you hear a knock. It's the vicar's wife. She sits by your hearth, pale and tired. I'm with child, she says. Again. Her last labour nearly killed her. I cannot do it again, she whispers. He won't hear it, but I can't. You meet her eyes. You nod once, slowly. You hand her the tea. She cries. You hold her. And in the morning she walks home upright, eyes dry. No one ever knows, but you do. And that knowledge weighs something holy. It comes slowly at first, a sideways glance, a question phrased too sweetly. Then it grows. A longer wait at the door, a patient's husband who insists on a second opinion from someone trained. A birth you used to be summoned for, that now goes to a man with polished boots and a Latin book he barely understands. It's happening. The world is changing, and your place in it is shrinking. You hear the whispers in the market. They say a new doctor is coming. A real one, as if your hands, stained with the memories of 50 births, are somehow imagined. He arrives with fanfare, a clean-shaven man in stiff lace, travelling with a box of silver tools, and a boy apprentice who looks like he's never been screamed at by a woman in labour. The villagers swarm him. He speaks with confidence, tells them things they already know in words they can't understand. He says things like hysteria and uterine misalignment. You hear him pronounce a breech birth a matter for the surgeon's blade. You mutter under your breath, only if you want to kill her. You watch as mothers who once clutched your hand now clutch their coins for him. He prescribes bitter tonics that do nothing. He insists on bleeding women after birth. You know how many that will kill. But he has a seal, and a guild, and a hat with a feather. You have your satchel, your silence, your reputation, which now feels more like a rumour than a shield. Historians often chart this moment as a transition, from woman-led wisdom to male-dominated medicine, from birth as a communal rite to birth as a surgical problem. But to you it feels like erasure, not of your name, but of every mother you ever saved. The worst part, some of them believe he's better. You visit one such woman, Agnes, third child, always delivered early. She greets you at the door with a hesitant smile. He's already been, she says, referring to the new doctor. But you can come in. You do. You examine her belly. Too high, too tight. The baby isn't settled. The doctor told her it would correct itself. You doubt that. You teach her the old squat and rock technique. You make her tea. You leave her with a sachet of herbs tied in string. 2 nights later, she births a healthy girl. The doctor never returned. She names the baby Jane. But for every mother like Agnes, there are 2 who now look past you. You start to feel like a ghost in your own village. Present, but fading. You find yourself called only when things go wrong. When the doctor panics, or is too far, or simply shrugs and walks away. One night, you're awoken by a desperate knock. A boy stands outside, panting. They said to fetch you. Mistress Ellen's gone white. She won't stop bleeding. You arrive to chaos. The new doctor stands to the side, hands shaking. He looks at you like a butcher looks at a storm. You take control. You apply pressure. You use vinegar and linen, yarrow and still warm wax. You kneel in blood. You pray not the church's words, but your own. You save her. He leaves before dawn. Later, he tells the village it was his technique that helped. You say nothing. You never do. But they know. At least some of them do. Still, the tide is turning. Birth is becoming sterile, controlled. Less about care and more about order. You hear of forceps being used in towns downriver. Giant tongs of iron, crushing heads more often than guiding them. You wonder what the mothers are told. That it's progress. You sit by your fire that night and stare at your tools. The shears, the thread, the charms, the salves. They look like relics now. Not to you, but to the world. You write fewer notes in your ledger. You patch your satchel less often. The girls don't come by like they used to. One afternoon, you walk to the village square and hear a young mother say, "I heard she used to be a midwife." Used to be. As if you're a ghost, a rumour, a worn-out tale. You smile, softly, because they may forget your name. They may chase you from the birthing rooms and claim your work as their own, but they cannot undo what your hands have done. You delivered babes by candlelight and instinct, not tools. You held the trembling hands of frightened girls and stitched mothers back together without asking for coin. You gave women something no man ever could, understanding. Even if they don't remember, you do. And somewhere in cradles across this village, your legacy still breathes. In lungs you helped expand. In tears you helped dry. In hearts you helped begin. The road is quieter now. The village still hums with life. Chickens cluck, hammers echo, children shout. But fewer people stop you when you walk past. Some nod politely. A few smile. Most simply let you pass. You don't mind. You've learned to treasure silence. Then one grey morning there comes a knock. A familiar rhythm. Not frantic, not desperate, just steady. A call that carries respect in its calm. You open the door to see Alice, the baker's youngest. Barely grown, cheeks round with youth, but her belly, ripe and low, tells you it's time. Her eyes are soft and frightened, and her mother stands behind her, equally unsure. She wants you, her mother says. No one else. You feel your breath catch. It's been weeks since someone said those words. You grab your satchel. The birth is long, not because it's difficult, but because Alice is afraid. You've seen fear stretch labour like taffy. You talk to her softly. You place warm cloths on her belly. You rub oil on her back. You hum. You tell her stories of the fastest birth you ever saw, the smallest baby who grew up to be a giant, the mother who swore during labour and became a nun 2 years later. She laughs, through tears, and the laughing helps. When the baby comes, it's as if a curtain lifts from the room. Light pours in through the window, and the baby's first cry cuts through the quiet like birdsong. A boy. You wrap him gently, place him on her chest. She sobs, and you let her. You clean her, check for tearing, none, and tie the cord. She asks you to stay, so you do. You brew tea, wash the linens, rock the baby while she naps. The cottage smells of ash, sweat, and the faint sweetness of birth. You sit in the chair by the hearth, the baby curled in your arms, and your whole body sighs. You think of all the others, all the babies who came out blue and gasping, who were rubbed warm by your palms, all the mothers who fought to live, who breathed because you were there, all the husbands who cried with relief, the grandmothers who watched you like you were part miracle, part mystery. This is your final birth. You know it in your bones. You walk home in the gold of early evening. The sun filters through the bare trees, casting long shadows on the dirt path. Your satchel is lighter somehow, not in weight, but in burden. Back at your cottage, you sit with your hands in your lap and look around. The walls are lined with stories, bundles of dried time, the dent in the floor where you dropped a kettle in a rush, the hook where your shawl always hangs. You open your ledger and write one last time. Alice, first birth, healthy boy. Named him Thomas, strong lungs. Then underneath, this was the last. You set your pen down. That night, you sit by the fire until the logs burn down to soft embers. You sip broth with honey and tuck a warm stone beneath your feet. Your joints ache, but you don't mind. They ache with a life fully. Used, outside, snow begins to fall. You smile. You made it. You were a healer in a world that feared women who knew too much. You were hands in the dark, voice in the pain, steady as the moon. Let them forget your name. Let the world turn to books and blades. You were there when it mattered, and now it is time to rest. And now you sit quietly, letting the fire shrink to a gentle glow. The village sleeps, tucked under snow, every window dark. Somewhere, a baby stirs in his cradle, your last little delivery, and a mother draws him close without waking. The world is moving forward, slowly, softly, and you're ready to let it. The floor beneath your feet is warm. Your shawl, old and threadbare, still holds the scent of rosemary and smoke. The air hums with the quiet rhythm of winter, of endings, of peace. Your satchel lies on the table. You won't need it again. The scissors, the cloth, the scraps of old charms, they've done their work. Let them rest too. You breathe in and out. There is nothing more to do. No more knocks, no more screams, only the gentle hush of the night, and the knowing that, for all your doubts, your hands did good in this world. You were witness to life, over and over again, in its most fragile and ferocious form. You held it, caught it, saved it when you could, and mourned it when you couldn't. Let that be enough. The wind softens, the hearth clicks, you close your eyes, and somewhere a new cry begins. Far from you now, in a room you'll never see, a baby draws breath, and another woman leans forward with steady hands, just like yours once were. The work goes on, but yours is done. Sleep well, midwife, sleep well.